So, so the first question you asked is, so how has the government dealt with this situation across the education system? So, Hong Kong was quite, the government in Hong Kong already, because of the history with SARS and the protests last year, they have quite weak legitimacy that if they didn't take quite strong measures early on and the virus spread, then I think they would have come under a lot of scrutiny. So anyway, very early on, I think after Chinese New Year, universities, all levels of education basically were, I think initially it was suspended, like Chinese New Year was extended for 2 weeks, and then everything went online. Now, I'm not sure exactly how this worked across all levels of education, but I think that, and I'm not sure, are you interested in just all levels of education or higher education?
I'm interested in whatever you can say about it.
Yeah. So everything moved online. And I think probably very different schools were probably ready to different degrees, right? And for us at the university, let's see, we had the 2-week extension of Chinese New Year, then all of our teaching was online, and they kind of handled it on, I think it was like every 2 weeks they would assess the situation, and that's essentially how it's gone on, and to the point that now the entire semester has been online, right? So I had basically 2 face-to-face classes with my before Chinese New Year, and everything since then has been online. And I think that in Hong Kong, higher education, certainly our university, we have like a dedicated e-learning hub. And in recent years, they were pushing so strongly for people to put materials online that a lot of students had actually pushed back and said, like, we're paying and we want to have more face-to-face teaching, which I think is quite interesting. So we just actually this year had received advice that, whereas previously they'd said, you've got to put more stuff online, they changed the kind of quota or the target for the number of online sessions that you would have.
Okay.
Yeah, but let's see, so how has the government dealt with it? But that's how, I'm not sure how, so of course exams, I think then some exams got pushed back or cancelled.
And in Hong Kong, do you know if they have, like, because I was told in some other countries, at the end of secondary schools, they have like final exams or entrance exams for universities.
Looking, yeah, they have those. I'm just looking at the moment actually to WhatsApp, because that's been quite controversial. But I'll have to actually, if you don't mind, I'll get back to you on exactly what's happened with those. So that's been an ongoing debate, right, in the media, for sure, what to do about exams and things like that. And then there've been, stories, of course, that different schools receive different levels of funding, are better equipped to kind of go online. Students, of course, Hong Kong is massive inequalities. A lot of students might not have space at home, all these kinds of issues. A lot of them don't have the necessary equipment, things like that to do this. All of those issues have come out, and I think that kind of then bleeds into the second question, which is this going to alter the basis of schooling? And I'm not sure what it's like in Argentina, but certainly, it's an opportunity, right, for technology companies and anyone with an interest in pushing online learning to argue for its merits. I'm not sure that the experience in Hong Kong has strongly supported that.
Mm.
But personally at the same time, it's forced. I don't know about yourself, but it's forced me to start engaging. To build online to my course now for the semester is now online essentially, so that could be run again.
And do you think this is a way to go, or because some people say, well, is this necessary? Should we? Sometimes we get caught or by all these technologies, and maybe what we are doing is all overwhelming students with sending all these materials and everything. And would you say, is this necessary or not? Or what would be the benefits of going online, for instance, at the university level? Because as you said, for example, in Hong Kong, students were demanding more face-to-face teaching. So why do you think
Yeah, well, I think that this is, of course, we had that push, right, for the idea that MOOCs emerged and they were going to just revolutionize education. Of course, there's a lot of great online courses and they're growing in popularity, but I think that there's still a sense, obviously, right, that universities and whether it's the face-to-face interaction, the whole experience of being on campus, and all of the different aspects of university life, right? That's a big part of being at a university and the education beyond going through an online module, right? So,
and if we have to think, because I was talking to a colleague from Spain, and we are up to the idea that we got to the idea that online, on the one hand, will allow to have more students because you can have as many students as you can think of. So in a way, it can turn into a more democratic tool, because you are going to distribute knowledge in a larger scale. But on the other hand, we have all these drawbacks, like it's not face-to-face, the importance of meeting, of being there, reactions. And so how should we keep a balance on this? Because
well, one thing I noticed is that this semester, let's say this semester, it's been quite difficult to really get to know and build any kind of meaningful, really get to know the students. Because over Zoom, on the one hand, it's great, everyone can log into Zoom, but many of the students remain quite anonymous, right? So our experience in Hong Kong is that for varying reasons, so let's say if I'm doing a Zoom class, none of the students will generally, for example, put on their video, and and of course, for whatever reason, they don't feel comfortable, they don't want to show their backgrounds, and also their microphones. They're in Hong Kong, it's very noisy environment. If they put their microphone on, anything's going on in that house. So the experience of teaching has largely been just speaking into a monitor, sometimes they'll use the chat function. And so, well, I guess it's from a personal perspective, but it's just strange, but it's very difficult to get to know your students, right? Find out what they're interested in, and
But I was thinking, because what you have just said, I have the same feeling, and students, they turn on the video, and it's necessary to turn the mic, because if not, you cannot hear. But if all those issues, which are technical issues, were solved, and they all have good connection, and I don't know, we can avoid noises in some other way, and so we have their faces, and we can listen to them. And would you say it's a way to go? Because if it is a technical problem, then someday we'll find a solution for that. So what I'm thinking
I'm not
is,
sure. Yeah, it might be in part. So it's probably like in part it's maybe a technical problem. In part it's probably this was my first semester trying to hold classes online, right? So it's probably my own incompetence, right? And kind of trying to figure out how to manage classes. Not done that, but I think there's something. I don't think it's just a technical issue. Like with the students, they don't feel, they don't want to show video. They don't want to write, so it becomes something that they hide behind. And I don't think that by improving the technology that maybe you could stipulate everyone has to have videos on and they have to do this, but that's not the way that our university went so far. I know. I think, that's one of the big, it's one of the ideas, right? That the new technology is promoted on, right? It will disrupt time and space. So a student anywhere can just log in, and it doesn't matter where they are. They'll be part of this. They can be part of this global, like, educational framework. So, I'm not. It sounds great. I'm not sure. I'm not so. And of course, yeah, I see absolutely what you mean about, in principle, yeah, expanding access to students from different parts of the world. But what kind of education are they getting and what do they need? I'm not sure.
Okay.
So, like, organized. What did you mean when you mentioned organized exams? What were you thinking there?
No. I was thinking about the final exams at the end of secondary school that are linked to entrance to university, because what some other colleagues have told me in other countries that have these exams, we don't have those exams in Argentina, but I know they have told me about these exams, and what they have done in these countries is they have canceled, they have given all students, well, in Spain, for example, they have approved all students, but they still have to do that exam. And in Denmark, they are going to use, they have like this conceptual note or mark that they are going to use, but for some subjects, students are going to have the exam, because if not, they cannot get into university. So I was thinking about how this final exam is in a way regulating, even in the pandemic, the organization of schools, because they can cancel evaluations and they say we'll promote our students, but we'll still have those exams. I was like, a surprise of the role they play in regulating the whole system. And so I was wondering if you have any news on this, on the situation in Hong Kong, if they do have.
I need to look into exactly what happened, but Hong Kong's massively exam oriented system, right? So that's been one of the major issues as this continued, as I believe it has in a lot of countries. Is it fair for the students to sit the exams? How are they going to do it, right? And how should it be handled? But yeah, the exams, I think the exams, and particularly the high stakes exams, for example, that will determine who can progress, generally tend to define education as a whole. Whatever else is stipulated up in the clouds, right? Or it's what's going to be the assessments. But what do you think? I know that you're asking me, but do you think it's going to alter the basis of schooling? If it goes on it looks like if we're talking about for the, if this goes on, we have a few like over the next few years, we have a lockdown, things are online, and then things go back to normal, but there's a big outbreak and everything goes online again, and that starts to become a new normal, then the thing at the moment is that it's strange for everyone.
Yeah.
And that I include myself in that, right? Like, I was not prepared to teach online. I'm not it's not like I have anything against it, but I wasn't particularly prepared. But maybe after, if this was to go on for a few more years and we've had to prepare and teach more courses online, the students get more used to it, then and well, it would alter the basis of schooling, I think, not only in just how we're doing it online, right? It starts to alter what education is and how, you know, because you're basically, what that reflects then is that more and more of our interactions in society, if that's happening in education, then probably more and more of what we're doing is going to be online. And students are so, we're kind of, so it's difficult to say, but I think that if as it seems, this could be something that's here for a few more years, then it does. And if students are being schooled, if they get, you know, there will be students that, if this were to go on for 3 or 4 years, then that's their normal, right?
Yeah.
That's what education has been, right? Like for us, it's like, oh, all of a sudden we've got to do this, but for a lot of, maybe for younger generations and students who are already living a lot of their lives online, social media or whatever, right? Then education just, I don't know, but and then it's not something I've thought through, but then, I mean, yeah, time and space, okay, curricula. Yeah, was there anything else that, I mean, that people have mentioned that you think is interesting, that you think
I was thinking, it was this Danish colleague who said one of the something that he was fearing is that this virus, in a way, with this virus, we are like very much aware of the other. You know, the other is a threat because he might be ill or he might have the virus, and so his reflection was, I'm a bit concerned about how this will, especially in young children, how is this going to work, because if you are always going to be afraid of the other. And then I was thinking, this is a problem for schooling, because one of the bases of schooling is that it's better to learn together. That's why it's not only because it's more efficient and economic to have them all together with one teacher and so on, but because it's better to learn with others. But if those others are seen as a threat, then how is this going to work? And I was linking this with what you said about, well, what education is. If we have all these students trained online, and then it's like a habit, and so we won't have the problem we're having now, that is difficult for us, it's difficult for them. We'll all be trained on that, but is that what we want for education? And I don't know, I could say, no, it's important to get to know the other, and to learn about respect and how to live together, and what we have been saying about. UNESCO has been talking about this for ages.
But I think, like, I mean, I agree, right? Like, for me, it's, education is, right, that's the whole part of, like, being in school, is you're not just learning, going through a module online, right? It's the whole socialization process. You're learning, you know, all this kind of stuff. So what I'm saying is that, like, if this was to continue, right, then schooling fundamentally changed, because it's no longer about education as we understand it, which is this whole holistic process, right? But maybe they can't do that online, right? Maybe society and interactions and those kind of things are moving online, and it's just something that's totally alien to us, and is a different form of interacting in a way of, and if that's what, if you know, if that fear of the other isn't only in school, but it manifests across society as a whole, right? It's not like if that's in education, it's because it's in a society more broadly, right? So I mean, but yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, and and that's one of my that's one of the reasons that I have been skeptical towards, you know, just online learning in general, like a transition towards online learning, wholesale, at least in general, right? Is because it seems to be a kind of diminished. It's very much about, it seems like getting qualifications, right? And then, right, so for me, it's not really what education is really about. But yeah, I mean, if you're talking about maybe if it alters the basis, well, that's, you know, maybe it would. Maybe it's a window. Maybe it would provide a window for people who don't see the bigger picture of what education and schools are about, right? Technology companies, politicians, right? So it's you know, it's possible. I don't see it going, you know, moving as drastically as that just yet. As I said, you know, even our students were complaining about having too much online. They even before this happened, right? So.
And I was thinking about well, all this work you have done around PISA and so on, and maybe what we're saying is, well, if we go on this the online way, then it's not what we think we want about education. But on the other hand, we have been like discussing the way, for example, the OECD and PISA are thinking about education regarding to, well, getting them ready for exams. And I was thinking, where are we now regarding that issue? Because we were not that comfortable with what was going on in schooling, especially regarding the way these organizations have get into schooling through curricula and exams and so on, and they probably find their way to keep doing that online because they can do that, and they find a way to do that. So we are quite sure we don't want to go the online way, because that's not what we feel or think about education, but we were not that comfortable with what was going on. So I don't know, what would you say, what should we start thinking about in connection with these exams and international organizations like modeling educational systems and online here, which it seems to work in a similar way?
So the OECD, right, they released a report. You see that? Yeah, the framework to guide on an education response. And I think I've been chatting to, I mean, a lot of that report, it's strange anyway, right? So they ask questions. A lot of it, as I understand, the OECD anyway has already been embracing like technology companies, you know, and let's say whether it's online, moving online, the impact it's going to have on the economy, but also on education. And I think within that report, there's a lot of whether it's like policies or let's see, like actually I have it here, but you could already find in other, you know, in their recent reports. And so it's kind of like this plays in, it kind of supports a direction they were already moving in. You know, of course, so they trialed putting assessments, doing the assessments online and stuff with students. And let's see. But so I read a couple of, I've read a couple. My initial feeling was that this is clearly something that's going to be, having read kind of different literature coming out from different technology, kind of Pearson, Microsoft. This is clearly an opening, right, for them to promote products, new ways of learning. We have to be prepared, like teachers, schools, they have to be prepared in case things like this happen again. That kind of thing. But I'm not sure. What do you mean in terms of? So I can clearly see the opening for tech, for tech companies to push it. But what do you mean in terms of the OECD and just international assessments? What are you thinking?
No, I was just thinking about like we had this discomfort regarding what they were doing, and now, as you have just said, well, this is an opening for them. If they were modeling our educational systems, they probably will have more influence. So I was just thinking about that. Is this maybe an opportunity for these global orientations provided by international organizations to reinforce their presence on educational systems? That's what I was wondering.
I think absolutely right, and I think you can see from the flurry of publications that have come out ostensibly in response to it, but also in line with their pre-existing agendas. We can see that. This is. I think actually there was, of course, was it Naomi Klein that had the disaster capitalism, and then I think Ben Williamson just published a blog actually talking about how this was an opening for technology companies, which was along the same lines, right? Of the and the OECD always, anyway, right? It's all about a crisis is an opportunity, whether it's real or manufactured, whether it's real or imagined, right? It's so. Great. The degree to which that'll, have a long-term impact, I'm not sure, but.
And do you think that this will change? And this is the last one. This will change your research agenda, your research interests, because now they.
But what about like even the idea of globalization, right? That's being kind of fundamentally challenged as well. So there, of course, since 1990, right? We've been on the OECD, everything's global knowledge economy, everything's becoming more. But it's amazing that just this last few months, right? A lot of those ideas have been this just a huge retraction, right? Whether it's global economies, supply chains, travel, and so actually, the ideas that they're founded on are kind of course, it's not forever. But I'll be quite interested to see, like if how things settle, right? Because at the moment it's not clear. It doesn't seem clear that we'll just return to normal. The same imaginaries and narratives, they can just keep spitting those out. I don't know. So I'll be interested to see how they realign it. But for my own sorry, and you were saying for my research interests, or just work in general?
Research interests, because sometimes I have the feeling that we were like, I don't know, we were working on the effects of PISA in Latin America and so on. And then this interruption, and you start to think, well, should I keep thinking about PISA in Latin America, or I have to turn to these and think about, well, what will become of education in a world where all socialization will take place through technologies, and we should and of course I'm not saying that we have to change our research agendas, but is this something that has that you have thought about, or it's not really altering what you have been working on?
No, I'm definitely. I don't think I've thought about just dropping everything that I was doing, but I think that we should, and it's of course, we should be attuned to what's happening, right? It's just that things are interesting because they're important, they're significant, and so this is so what's been going on during this period certainly is it raises interesting issues and problems that are definitely worth pursuing. I've not as yet kind of just abandoned or dropped other research interests and projects, but definitely, just like yourself, I mean, definitely, we're having discussions with who people don't really talk about much else at the moment other than what's going on with COVID-19.
Yeah.
And then, and so, what are the implications kind of in education? And certainly, as you raise here, right, I'm even speaking to my students in the classes where I have a class on like socio-cultural and philosophical issues in education. Most of them are interested in looking at like online learning, artificial intelligence. Should we replace they want to do an essay on, could face-to-face teaching be replaced, and a lot of them, to be fair, a lot of them think that it can or shouldn't. And but it is interesting to see that, like that's where their interest lies. And
well, that's an interesting research topic. I mean, how papers or students' papers or move their topics to during the pandemic to this kind of issues.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think they're interesting things that seem, that they can relate to, right? And they just had this really sudden, an extreme experience of that shift, and so a lot of them have things to say about it, I think, right? Because so and likewise, I'm interested in technology anyway, right? I'm interested in that anyway, and how it's being pushed in education, and thinking about what kind of impact that's having. There are so many different ways you can cut that, right? As you said there, it's that idea of like moving to this online, this digital realm where like education happens, and a lot of people's visions of the future are like that, right? It's augmented reality or extended reality, right? So it's kind of like we got fast forward into an imagined future where we weren't ready. And it's okay. It's been very difficult for a lot of students and for teachers, but over the last few months, we've almost been living a future that a lot of people have been pushing for. Technology
at
companies, products, right? Yeah, right. So I don't think it's gone that well, but it's not to say that it's hard to, I don't know how you feel, but it's hard to, because I think we have a tendency to use technologies, right? Like where we have them regardless, without really thinking through the full implications. So as these keep developing, I mean, we pump out graduates in artificial intelligence and whatever, machine learning, and they want to turn it to something in education, seems like, and so that March is going to, I think that we'll be seeing more products and more of that. So
and I recall, do you together with some colleagues, you introduced or were thinking about this science fiction issue in, I remember CAS last year and virtual CAS this year. And so now you have just said that we probably have been pushed to this imagined future, which sometimes seems to turn on to appear in science fiction. So would you say like this is something, are we in a science fiction moment? Is this a science fiction
I think period? I mean, well, it's interesting. I don't know, but I think that so, I mean, there's a lot of people would say already, right, that we're kind of living in a science fiction world, right? But that it advances slowly and imperceptibly so that we're not necessarily attuned to the changes that are taking place or have taken place around us. And you think, I mean, technology is advancing and has advanced certainly since just I was in high school to astounding degrees. Then you have, for example, like a global pandemic, really strange, unpredictable configuration that pushes us into a reality that 6 months ago was just completely unthinkable. So yeah, you could. I mean, and a lot of course science fiction just starts right with a what if question. What if, and then it unfolds, right? And so I'm not sure. You could say certainly. I think it's a useful and interesting resource, and we can continue to look at that. And are we living in? Yeah, I think so. What do you think? I mean, I've just been in Hong Kong for the last year, in which living through like bizarre protests. You know, that's all been unfolding. Then COVID-19 technologies, well, the educational technology. I think, I don't know what's your experience with the technology, you know, and trying to use it in education. My feeling was there are some quite useful platforms, but we weren't really prepared nonetheless.
Yeah, I agree with you that we were not, I mean, we are not prepared, and platforms can be useful. And there is a lot of that we have to dig in more, because you always find like, oh, this is something that I could do if I knew how to use it better. And there are like unlimited possibilities and alternatives. But then my concern is we don't have the infrastructure. But if we had been, and then it's like this what if questions. What if we had the infrastructure and we have the training, and is that the way we would like to go? And so I think that what you said here about the what if questions, it's very appropriate for this moment, because maybe it's something that we have to think of, provided that we had all the conditions, that we were trained, that students have the technology, that everything is available, and is that the way we want to go. We would like to go with teaching, with education, with the way we offer, and the way we distribute knowledge.
So I guess the other thing is, right, is like, what if, for whatever reason, if it's global pandemics, like cataclysmic climate change, we can't return as normal always to bricks and mortar schools. And just as we have done over the last 3 months, we simply have to move online. And that's not inconceivable, as the last 3 months have shown us, right? Which it seems, to me, it seemed like crazy. But actually, we had in Hong Kong the last 6 months of the year, or the first semester, this time last year, due to protests, things moved online or were cancelled. Then this has happened. And there's enough going on to suggest that, look, this might not be just a blip and then we can return to. So maybe it will, but I don't think the question is, okay, well, if this is a new normal or something that's, well, how do we envisage, how do we want to accept that we can't return to the way things were, but we do have an idea of what we think education is about? How can we translate that? How does that move and translate into a different medium, into something that, well, education anyway would in a sense be different in that kind of world where education has had to move online. We're preparing students to live in a fundamentally different reality, right? But I think that's an interesting thing to think about is, okay, like, yeah. Of course, it could pass in 2 months and we all go back and act like this never happened. But what this has shown is that, what it might encourage us to think about is, okay, like maybe not only this pandemic, but before, so let's say before like CIS, it was, all of everything we were talking about, the whole premise is climate change, right?
Yeah.
Which massively pressing issue that we were completely missing, that we've not responded to adequately, but it was really going to tip our realities way off scale, right? And then out of nowhere we had this, but the climate problem's still there.
Yeah. No.
This is now here. We've got a slightly different configuration, but so I don't know. I'm not sure, but it's quite a. What do you think? How does education change? Do we have to change?
What I think is, I'm not sure if, because one thing is education and a different thing is schooling. So we'll probably have to change schooling.
Yeah.
I don't know if this situation goes on for like 2 months, then maybe we can go back to schooling as we know it. But as you said, if it goes for years, then probably schooling has to be changed, because schooling depends on physical presence, on sharing time and space, and so that it's, in my opinion, going to be altered. But then we can think about education in different settings, not only schools, but museums and open parks, and that's something that in some countries they have already been doing that. Like in Denmark, they have this program in schools to use like different local settings to provide education, and not only in school. And so in a way, we can probably change that, alter the use of time and space. What I'm not so sure is about this the personal connection between teacher and student, or professor and student, and that you were talking about that at the beginning, where students they want to be face to face, and there's something there that is different regarding transmission, and that I don't know if technologies are suitable for that. And it's also, we will probably go into a more I fear that this the peril of individualism, because technology, even though you can have people together at the same time, in a way it's yourself connecting with the technology. And we have assumed and we have agreed that it's better to learn with others, together with others, because that's the way in a way you learn to live with others. So maybe technologies will push or will reinforce a society in which you don't need the other, you don't need to get in touch with others. So as an educational tool, I think there is something that we should be aware of, that maybe it's not that globalization and these new ways of forms of capitalism are pushing to a more individualistic society. But if we use and if we assume that technologies is the way to go in education, we will be helping, we will in a way promoting that direction. So that's.
And I think like a lot of from what I know about the education technology, right, especially the AI ed stuff, it's all about super like personalized learning, right? Everyone has their own AI ed tutor that tailors every lesson to them. There's, you know, it seems like everything's mediated by the machine, by the technology, and I don't know, presumably they can open you into like, oh, you can join this world classroom. But as you say, right, everything goes through the technology. So yeah, that's interesting because it's fundamentally altering a student, a person's, their experience of reality, right? Like what's real, like who, what's important, like, and but I think that's one of the main characteristics from what I've seen of the technology being promoted anyway, and students aren't even, you know, if they're not interacting, spending time in classrooms, doing any of that. So that's interesting. But it's interesting you said there that was it in Denmark and where they're finding different ways of using space. Do you think is there any, you know, from this? Do you think there's any potential to offer creative alternatives that aren't, you know, that you just mentioned, I think was in Denmark, there's what are you saying? So are there things that have been kind of neglected or overlooked that from this, like if you were to say, okay, this is a situation that might be around for a while, these are alternate ways of doing schooling outside of the usual.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Something I've been thinking about before this is that especially, no, I wouldn't say for primary school because kids are little, but I would say for secondary school, do we need to have them all the time in schools the way we do? Sometimes I think that that's not really necessary, that we can but of course this could promote the increasement of inequalities, because not everyone can be at home and doing some homework or going to the, I don't know, social activities or to the club. So this would mean that, and I think that's what the Danish are moving this way. This would mean a lot of welfare state infrastructure, not only directed to schools, but, you know, social services and facilities. And so I think that's why the Danish, which have a very strong welfare state, then they can move in that direction. But I think that we definitely, well, not definitely, but that this is, if one thing, for one thing, I think this is an opportunity to rethink about the use of time, because and it's interesting because here in Argentina we are moving to extend schooling time because the results are very bad, because it's the way to be more democratic and you know. And I'm not sure about that. I mean, okay, you will have students more time in school doing what and for what? Is that the way? Is that necessary? I think you can do, and technologies in that way could provide some help and be an aid in that. You don't need so much new personnel. You don't need so much new teachers or professors or tutors, but maybe you just need to think about another way of organizing how these tutors could work online, for instance. You don't need to have tutoring I'm talking about secondary schools mainly. And you can have lessons but then you can have tutors online, and so
yeah.
like you can think about a different configuration, and then I think that's something that we should go into, and it has not, and it's not really related to COVID, because this is something that I was thinking before, but I think that this shows this is an opportunity to think about how this we don't, it's not necessary to have people all together all the time as we thought when schooling turned into a big scale enterprise, you know. I think the opportunity of technologies is that you can get access to a lot of people, you can gain scale without the need of having them in the same settlement. So I would say I think that there's an opportunity there, but we have to be very careful of all of these what if questions that you were raising.
But I think as well, like technology, it's about how we use it, right? It's here. Clearly, it's useful. Also, I mean, it is fundamentally changing society and education, the way, you know, our experience of being with people. You know, everyone, you didn't have a mobile phone when I was young, right?
No.
Think about the contrast between the way you used to interact with your peers when you're young and now. These are like small things are quite significant. But technology, like, I guess, like, has always, as it advances, it's changed society, it's changed the economy, education, and this is something that's going on. And so I think what you say there is right. It's like, it's not that it clearly can be useful, and maybe it can be used to help us reimagine kind of education in a positive way, right? So I think that's the challenge, is that already in response to this, we know what, we know what, let's say, like a corporation is going to promote. We know what OECD is. Okay, we know what they're going to do, but we also know the kinds of technology that are available, and how can we kind of embrace it constructively to promote what we think would be beneficial for education, societies, and schooling. So I think that probably it is actually, like an opportunity for, as you said, these are things you were thinking about prior to 19. Well, is this then an opportunity for us, you know, to step in and really articulate and promote that vision?
Exactly. Good. I'd like that last remark, an opportunity to step in. I think that we have something there.
Yeah, especially, I mean, it's something that you clearly, you know, that you've been thinking about, and we have, you know, clear ideas, and we have that insight and overview as to what's going on and what might be beneficial. Like, it's on the one hand, right? It's always that balance. So we'll spend that time on the one hand. Okay, you're looking at what's going on, and we're trying to unpack and understand and articulate and like critique, and you want to do that so you can open space for something else. Okay, but can we also spend more time trying to articulate and promote what we think would be preferable, right? Okay, I know what my experience of this has been, and I know what I don't like about it. Okay, but what do you but it definitely, I mean, it definitely, as you mentioned, it definitely opens a space in this for some kind of change. And that the kind of change is still very, very much up in the air, because the immediate future is still completely, you know, everything's changing. So I don't know, but it's cool. So.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I'm just.
No, but it's. I mean, I have taken a lot of notes, so I really appreciate you sharing your ideas with me and your time. And
no, it's great. Thanks for doing it. I'm sorry I didn't really, I hadn't really thought through these kind of questions
No,
in
no,
advance.
but
So I just kind of,
I mean, the idea was just to like have an informal and see where the conversation leads us to. And I think that it has led us to a very exciting reflection. And in a way, we these all what if questions and the science fiction moment we are dealing with. So I think that's challenging. That's challenging, especially for me because I don't like science fiction. So
well, you're living in living in a science.
Yeah. So I am living the nightmare.
But that's it. I think that anyway. You don't have to read it, but.
Maybe I should, because then I would have a better understanding of this current situation. So maybe I should.
Yeah.